is there a reason why XSS is like your shit? Or did you like, were you a JS developer before?
No, not at all. I'm also a terrible developer in any but what I like about it is actually, we touched upon it a bit. Like, I like code review, but also at the same time clicking buttons. And I guess that's where that's where JavaScript comes in, right?
Alrighty, we're synced up. We're ready to go. All right, here we are in Portugal. We're in Joel's super swanky hotel room here. So thanks for that one, man. And we've got René here with us today, and we are all here in Portugal participating in Intigriti's live hacking event. It's been a blast so far, so we'll talk a little bit about that today. But yeah, René, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you for having me.
René. I always say René, but it's René, right?
René is fine too.
Okay,
whatever,
right.
whatever you like.
You know, whatever, man. We'll roll with
renniepak or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, you know, we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Intigriti this episode. We'll cover the podcast. You know, on this podcast, the live hacking event that we're participating in right now. And I also want to get your experience, you know, your take on your experience with Intigriti as a top Intigriti hacker there. But first, why don't you give us a little bit of an intro to who you are as a hacker and where you're full-time bug bounty right now, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'm René de Sain, better known as renniepak.
Right.
Nice. 39 years old. So I'm old. I live in the Netherlands with my wife and my daughter. Recently, 1.5 years ago, went full-time bug bounty hunter.
Nice.
And I have an interesting career path coming from studying to be a professional musician.
Yeah. So you told us about that. You were like, we were setting up the whole, you know, mobile recording setup, and you were like, yeah, actually, you know, I studied recording and audio engineering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's not exactly the most standard path to get into bug bounty.
No. So as a child, I joined the local orchestra. We have I think you have them as well in America, like the college band type of orchestra.
Yeah.
So I'm a percussionist. So I joined as a little kid, and I enjoyed myself, and I was good at playing percussion. And then you finish high school, you have to think like, what's next? What do I want to do? And everyone's like, you're such a good musician. You should do something with it. And you're young and you don't know what you want to do with life. So I picked that path.
Well, it's kind of interesting, man. I feel like the bug bounty industry, it has an odd number of people that are not traditional IT people that have joined the industry. And I'm not sure if that's just because it's accessible or whether like the brain, you know, the non-traditional brain or something like that really lends itself to hacking. So
yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
I think I can imagine that.
Yeah. And Joel does a bunch of music stuff too. So all you big brain music guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had a very similar, like I grew up, I was always playing music. Like I got into music school, and when it came time to be like, oh, what do I want to do? Computers was like drawing me in that direction. And so I decided to go that route instead of going the music route. But I think like that creative type of aspect where, you know, music, I think, has been shown to like, you know, increase, you know, learning capabilities and all that kind of stuff. And it's really good for, you know, young children as they grow up and all that. So I'm not at all surprised that there's so many like creative and that type of people within the hacking space.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm screwed because I do play piano and I sing, but like you know, I guess my traditional music skills are not very like, essentially the extent of my piano abilities is like, you know, I can do octaves on the left hand, and then on the right hand, I just like have the chord, you know, that I'm playing, and then I just kind of, you know, wave my hand like this, you know, and hope that the melody comes out. But normally, if you can stay in your key, you know, it's not too bad.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. So I guess normally with these interviews, we like to go down the path of like, you know, give us a little career history, tell us how you ended up in bug bounty. But I think I'm gonna take a little side turn today. I want to hear about some technical shit right off the bat. Okay, so you tweeted out a while back, big bounty that you got. Can you talk a little bit about in as much detail as you can talk about that vulnerability, what kind of vulnerability it was? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of funny. So the vulnerability that I found is actually my profile picture on Twitter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it wasn't on Twitter, but
grabs phone,
check
starts
out
looking
my
at
profile
Twitter.
picture. No. I actually found the same vulnerability on multiple programs.
Wow.
And technically, it's like a stored XSS.
Oh, this is an NFT.
In an NFT, right. So some platforms allow you to create an NFT, and they have like systems like lazy minting or stuff like that, where you basically only submit it to their platform, and once it's sold, they will create an actual NFT for you. But what you also can do, obviously, because the Ethereum blockchain is accessible to anyone, so I just how do you call it? Like minted my own NFTs, where I don't have to deal with all kinds of input validations, etc.
Sure.
And just used every kind of cross-site scripting payload in every kind of metadata field that I could find. And a lot of these platforms include everything that matches a certain standard to their platform.
Is that the ERC 712?
721.
Is that
712? Yeah.
721?
Yeah. 721.
Yeah, 721. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool, man. I did a little stint. I guess maybe what was it like? It's probably 2020 or 2021. During the COVID dark times. Into the Web3 hacking space, and I see there's a lot of potential there, but for me, it was not like my go-to thing. But I've also seen people like you and some other names that I won't call out directly that have really been able to milk the Web3, Web 2 bridge.
Yeah, that's exactly. I've had exactly kind of the same path. So I was interested, obviously, in these big bounties being paid out for Web3 issues. So I went to down the path studying Solidity and learning about smart contract vulnerabilities. Yeah. But I really disliked just doing code review. I actually really like code review when it's in a combination with clicking buttons or debugging stuff and see what happens next. And just solely the code review of Solidity contracts was a bit challenging for me. So that's why I went down the Web3, Web 2 where they meet.
Very interesting. I've done a little bit of Web3 research as well. And it's such an interesting space because there's so many different Web 2 technologies that connect into it. And, basically in order to interface with most of the Web3 stuff, you have to have some sort of Web 2 interface, right? Like OpenSea, for example, it is purely based on Web3. It's, reading information from the blockchain. It's doing all these things that are based in Web3, but it itself is a Web 2 website, right? And so I think that sort of gap in between is where there's a lot of room for those types of vulnerabilities that you talk about, where if it adheres to this standard, right? And
it's also, I'm really, it's like a blessing and a curse. I'm really into XSS and especially in the Web3 ecosystem. Sphere is it's much more critical actually if you have an XSS, because there's no server side stuff basically.
Absolutely. And there's so much stuff that happens with these browser based wallets and MetaMask and all that kind of stuff. So if you get an XSS in any of those contexts, there's so much risk for money loss and being able to steal funds and all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really interesting. You mentioned XSS, so I wanted to call this out because you have an XSS payload tattooed on your arm, which is crazy. Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it shows up in the camera if you're watching this on YouTube. But yes, you do have an XSS payload tattooed on your arm. So
correct.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
At some point when you have enough tattoos, your first tattoo is you really think about it for months and months, and it has a special meaning to you, etc. I just wanted to have a hacking tattoo. Obviously, hacking it means something to me nowadays, and I wanted the XSS tattoo. One that fits my arm. So this is basically the shortest one that I could came up with.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah. So, I guess Joel and I always forget this is a podcast, so we got to appeal to the audio medium as well. So for those of you listening and not watching, it's the SVG onload payload, one of the shortest ones you can get. And he's using I like the decision to go with the slash between the G and the onload rather than the space. I think that's great. I think that allows the flow to go fully together.
Well, can you imagine if the spacing was wrong too? Like if it's just like a little too wide, then it looks very weird.
I was very paranoid about when I rechecked the spelling like 10 times.
What did your tattoo artist think when you came in? You're like, hey, can I get this tattooed on my own?
Said, whatever you like. I have no clue what this means or what you're getting, but I'll do it.
Yeah, dude, it's funny. I think I've mentioned this story on the pod before, but Tommy DeVos, Doggy G, he's the guy that kind of got me into bug bounty in the first place because we live in the same city, and we were in a group chat and he was like saying, oh yeah, I'm thinking about getting this tattoo, and actually I think he posted it on Twitter as well. But he at one point he almost got the HTML source code of a what is it, the CVE details website tattooed on his arm, because he meant to get the C code for a specific exploit, but the guy went to the website and was like, oh, I guess I'll just do the HTML code. So he built it in and then he posted it, and everyone's like, you're going to do HTML code on your arm, with like, it does not even an XSS payload. He's like, oh shit.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm glad he did some sanity check there, because
I also got some comments when I posted it. Like someone mentioned, actually a kind of well-known hacker mentioned that this won't work if it's inserted in inner HTML.
Blah, blah, blah.
Dude, I was not going for a polyglot.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because you said like, the first tattoo you always like really, really think about, and I've been thinking about getting a tattoo and I want it to be hacking related, and I'm just like, I'm in that cycle right where I'm like, this would be kind of cool, and then I think about it for like a week or two, and I'm like, nah, it's not good enough. And so you want that first one, but my wife has a lot of tattoos, and she was like, she just goes and gets them like every couple months, and she's just like, I'll give one here and one here and here. So it's awesome.
Nice, cool.
Yeah, man, I've been thinking about it too, and I actually kind of even got a design. I'd like to do some circuitry and then integrate some HTTP request syntax and stuff like that. Awesome. Kind of mapping out a web architecture. But the thing is, if you go to Japan, then you can't get in the onsens, the spas, the hot springs, the public baths, and dude, I just love that. I love that in Japan. So like right before we went on this trip to Japan, which we just flew from Japan straight to Portugal, I was like, yeah, I'm really close to doing it. I think I'll do it within the next like couple months. And then I go to Japan and I'm like sitting in the hot tub thinking like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to me, man. So I don't know, man. I guess it's if Japan ever changes their policies, then I think I'll go down that route. All right, let's bring it back around. So you are top 10, I guess in Intigriti.
Not anymore. Actually.
Oh, not anymore.
I'm 11th.
Oh, he's 11. Okay, top. Of course.
Done with the podcast.
Top 11 in Intigriti. You've been working on the platform, for quite a while. But you've also done, I think I saw in a tweet, you've done some HackerOne stuff. You've done some hack and proof stuff. Talk to me about, I guess, the experience of working. There's like a fly here. There's about the experience of working on Intigriti versus the experience you've had on other platforms, and kind of lay out the differences for me.
I'm actually a big fan of Intigriti because on other platforms, I often had the feeling that they would treat me like, just like clearing the backlog.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, at Intigriti, there's really the triage team and the support team also always really personal. Especially, I think it would also help that I'm in the top because they know me and they help me, and that obviously helps. But in general, they're really, really open to feedback. They help you along, and they have some custom message for you. Oh, nice to see you back on the program or whatever. Nice. Not like just the thank you for your message number. Yeah. So that's something I really like, and I think I started at the right time at Intigriti to be able to grow along with the program, with the platform to reach like the top 10. Yeah, and that helps.
Yeah. Obviously. So how did you find out about Intigriti? Like, what led you to even hack on Intigriti versus HackerOne or Bugcrowd or any of the other ones?
So there's actually a kind of funny story as well. I was working at bol.com, which is like the tiny version of Amazon within the Netherlands and Belgium.
Cool.
And I was working on the security team there, also managing the bug bounty program.
Got it.
And there was this dude, also at the event, Kaptein, who submitted some reports. and they were all valid and accepted and whatever. And at some point, he needed an internship and asked through HackerOne to get an internship at our team, which he got.
Okay.
And he actually was already active on Intigriti and suggested I should have a look as well.
Oh, okay, interesting. So you were running a bug bounty program on HackerOne.
Yes.
And then he was like, "Hey, you should check out this platform, Intigriti."
Yeah.
And, wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. So then you just started hacking on Intigriti, and did you stick to one program or like?
No, I often tried to, like the top hackers that are really focused on one program. I can't manage to do it. I have my attention span is too short.
We all have ADHD.
Really, yeah.
I was talking with René in the car. You know, I was saying like so many of the top hackers have like this. They're just absolutely brilliant. And, you know, we've had this conversation before, Joel. I even feel this way with you. Like I feel like my thing is not necessarily like the, you know, engine burning really hot, you know, or the oven burning really hot, but the ability to like stay focused or stay committed to something. And it's amazing when, you know, you guys can actually direct that power at stuff. I'm always like in awe. So yeah, but it does come with the side of like, you do have to jump around from program to program from time to time. So.
Yeah, for live hacking events, I do want to force myself to focus on the target. So yeah, and I do it from time to time. But I'm not the type of guy that can totally get into one program.
Yeah. So do you do lots of events, lots of live hacking events?
I've done like 5 or 6 Intigriti events.
Okay.
HackerOne event.
Like all of them, I think, right? Yeah.
No, yeah, they have had a bunch, but I started during COVID, I guess. Some virtual ones.
Yeah.
So HackerOne event is high on my bucket list, but I guess I'm not active enough on HackerOne yet to.
We need like the status match that airline programs have.
That's true. I've been thinking about that. So we'll see, you know, how that goes. But I mean, obviously, if you can hack one place and you can hack in another place. But I will say there is something about live hacking events. Like you can see hackers that are phenomenal or even it goes both ways. You can see people that are phenomenal at hacking in a normal context, but then when you put them in a live hacking context, they can't do it. Yeah. Or the opposite as well is true. You see some people that are like so motivated by the competition, right? And they're like, oh, this is like amazing, like I can totally stay locked in. But then, you know, off platform, you know, or off the live hacking events, just on platform, it's very hard for them to stay focused. So it is a little bit of a trade-off as well there. And I'm curious, so going back to the question about you know, you're jumping around from program to program, like we've had people on the podcast that are pretty extreme with this. For example, Douglas Day, Archangel, he says he'll give it like, you know, 30 minutes to 3 hours or something like that, right? Before he switches programs if he doesn't find a bug. And then we've also had people, I think maybe the most clear example of this would be Alex Chapman or even me, who are like, yeah, I'm going to sit down for a couple weeks and try this program until, you know, I either beat it or it beats me. So where do you fall on that spectrum?
Depends on the mindset of the day a bit.
Yeah.
But typically I'm in the days area.
Okay.
But I'm also, some days you have like, especially being a full-timer, at the end of the day, you think, what have I done? I've just skipped over like 100 programs, checked out the scope, asked for credentials, and then moved on.
Yeah, so, end of the day. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've actually been having a lot of conversations with hackers at this event who participate in both Intigriti and HackerOne events and all that kind of stuff. And I've felt that over time, the more events that I do, it's actually very difficult to like get to that deep dive state, because oftentimes you'll be doing an event and then there's another one coming up and you just have to start prepping for that, and you have to like, you know, either focus on that one singular target, which is kind of a deep dive, but it's not really the same when it's forced in a sense, right? Where like, you know, essentially you're being told, oh, you need to hack on this, where it's like, you know, I might have ideas about a program that I'm really interested in, but I can't hack on it because I don't have, you know, the time, or, you know, I need to be focusing on this other program. So do you take notes? How do you deal with that when you're going in between events and full-time hacking?
I take notes. I try to take notes, but it's like I've heard other hackers say the same thing. It's like the notes.txt with some random stuff in there. And I did, when I became full-time, I did make it a habit to just put it in a Google Drive auto sync configuration, so I can look back at it. Typically, I don't really use it a lot, but
it's crazy that we've actually seen that across so many top performing hackers. I really would have expected that. And I guess, Joel, you're pretty much the closest thing to this with how organized you are with your, spreadsheets and stuff. But we haven't seen many hackers that do very structured notes, very detailed. I think one hacker comes to mind with this, and it's Mayonnaise on HackerOne. I know that he takes extremely structured notes and even does data science on all of his like burp files and like all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty crazy. We might should get him on the pod for like a counter take on that. But as a full-time hunter, you mentioned you're a full-time hunter.
Yeah.
I guess as a full-time hunter myself, I know that there's a lot of struggles that go along with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've seen, just looking at the history of that, how few people actually make it the whole even a year in full-time bug bounty hunting. So what, and you said you've been doing it for a year and a half. So
yep.
tell me about your experience and tell me about some of the struggles you've had with that.
For me, the most challenging part is working alone. Well, on the other hand, it's also like a con. So that's the thing I actually struggle with the most. So last winter in the Netherlands, I was still working from home. And I'm in the attic and it's raining outside and it's dark. And there were many times where I thought to myself, what am I doing with my life? So I tried to change that actually. So since last May, I'm now in a flex co-working space office, which is actually kind of nice, especially so I can have a commute to work and clear my mind when going home, etc. So that's nice. Still working alone. Still everyone is in their own cubicle doing their own thing. But it's a nice change of pace during the day.
Got it. So is that kind of like a WeWork type thing that I don't know if you know that we have this in the US.
No, mine is called Spaces. I don't know. It's also kind of international, but maybe in Europe. But yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, I have my own dedicated cubicle, basically on the floor with other cubicles.
Okay, so it's just like a little one-man office type. Yeah. Okay, very cool. Is it like a monthly fee or how does that?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I don't actually think I've heard of many hackers who do that, and I know a lot of people like the structure is like huge for being that. Like I'm not like that at all. When COVID hit, I was like, oh, I have to stay inside. Okay, sweet. Like say less, like that's totally like how I am. But I know a lot of people were just like dying to like just like get outside or like get back into like the social interactions and that kind of stuff.
I actually wanted to ask about that. Like I've struggled with that decision myself to go do a WeWork or like a collaborative workspace. And I think I don't have kids, so I'm sure this might change when I have kids. But like, do you mind if I ask how much that costs every month? Do you know off the top of your head?
Like in dollars?
No, euros.
It's like 400 euros or something.
400 euros. Yeah. Okay, so that's like I would definitely struggle with that decision, even though 400 euros is not too much to be paying for that sort of thing.
I did as well actually, and because I had to pay like you commit to like a year or something.
Oh, so, really? Yeah. Wow.
But it was actually around the time when I make the 50K. So I just said to myself, well, let's do this times 12, see what the total amount is. And then I took that from the bounty, put it in a separate accounting or savings account. And then I was like, done. I get rid out of it, out of my head. Nice. And this is it.
That's fun. Yeah, I was watching a video today that was it was like a plumber or something in New York City, but he was basically saying like just to like walk out the door and get in his car and like go do a job is at minimum like $1,000 a day, just in parking and insurance and fee and all that kind of stuff. And so like if you sort of extrapolate it out, like I think that's almost a good way to think about it, where it's like, okay, if it's say 400 euros a month or whatever, that's 100 euros a week. That's like, your operating cost basically. It's like, okay, I need to make 100 euros this week and that's it. If I don't make 100 euros this week, I make 200 euros next week, right? And so like if you can frame it that way, I think that kind of helps, because setting those goals is really good. One way I like to think about it is, I sort of frame it as like a yearly salary. Like say I want, X dollars per year, divide that by 12 or divide it by 52 weeks or whatever. Okay, I need to make this much per week. I need to make this much per month. And that's sort of like, if I get a bounty that's that much or more, I'm like, sweet. I don't have like, if I make more, that's great. But if I don't, like, I know that I'm going to hit, this much per year. And that's like, it's a lot easier for me to have that sort of system in my mind where it's more like split out and it's almost like a salary type thing instead of
I do the same,
like the grind. And I think a lot of people when they think about doing full-time bug bounty, they're like, oh well, where's that next bounty coming from? Where's that next like paycheck? Like there's no paycheck, right? And so I think if you have it like that, where it's like, you have monthly things that you have to pay for and all that kind of stuff, it's nice to kind of structure it.
Yeah, I do it exactly like this. So before I started, I made sure I had a financial buffer to be able to fail, basically. So at the time, the buffer was like 6 months or something. And now the buffer is like a year or something. But I also I give myself a fixed salary, and then I'll just keep filling the buffer. And it doesn't matter if it overflows or if it gets a bit less. But as long as it's a solid amount of money in there, then I'm content, I guess.
That's really interesting. I actually have a different approach to this. I guess I do still have all the money come into my company, and then I pay myself a normal amount out of that account. But I also found it a little stressful for me if I say, okay, I want to earn X thousand a year and then divide that by 12. And then, this is what I need to make every month because of the volatility of bug bounty. Right. And so like, for example, if I've got 6 bugs, 10 bugs, 15 bugs in the pipeline, and it switches over to October or whatever, and I'm like, I didn't make as much as I needed in September, then it kind of stresses me out a little bit. So I try to look at it more from like a holistic perspective of like, I have enough money in my buffer, to make it through, the end of this year for sure. And then I look back on the year and I say, okay, I made X amount that past year. I'll try to shoot for, because it is helpful to have goals. I'll try to shoot for roughly, X plus 1, X plus 2, 1.5 times X or 1.2 times X, for the next year. But breaking it down into individual months for me is just like, because it really, if I don't hit a goal, I'm like, come on.
I don't look at it from a monthly perspective. Like I look back a year typically to see how I'm doing. But I'll keep the monthly payments the same, so I don't have to worry about what's coming in.
Yeah. So I mean, on the topic of money, I think you posted on Twitter that you're looking for a job or doing consulting or stuff. So was that monetarily driven? Did you just want to kind of reduce that stress, or what sort of led you towards that?
This is actually related to what we're talking about. So the thing I struggle with is like working alone. Like all your colleagues are also your competitors.
That's intense,
and are like on the other side of the world. So I can't easily ask them a question. So that's the main reason where I was looking into getting a job again. But I also posted it like, just see what pops up, right? I'm not at a stage where I'm desperate to have a job or desperate to change something overnight because I can't take it anymore. Just like I said, I'm a bit conflicted with the working alone, because I also really like it. I also really like not having to deal with meetings that I don't care about, not having to report to a manager that has an opinion on my performance. So that's the plus side of bug bounty, obviously.
Dude, the meeting thing, it's so foreign to me, man. Like I was talking to a friend in Japan the other day who's like, yeah, there's this guy in my organization that like will ping me. This isn't even his superior. This is his, same level dude. And he'll be like, hey, we're going to have a meeting in 10 minutes and it's going to be an hour-long meeting. And he just drops it on him like that. And I'm like, dude, you gotta say no to that. Yeah. Like you gotta there's no way I could live my life, with but on the other hand, also, if I've got a meeting on my calendar, it's like, oh, okay, I've got a 4-hour block here. What can I accomplish in a 4-hour block, and the 4 hour, and the reason why, that affects me is because it does take so much focus to do bug bounty. Yeah. Like I find it very hard to jump in and out of a flow state, of your focus state in bug bounty. So I definitely understand that there.
Yep.
Yeah. So speaking of flow state, what's your wow, I just went through puberty again. Wow. So what's sorry. So what is your hacking like flow actually look like? What do you when you approach a target? What is your mindset? How do you look at the target? What are the first things you do? What are the things you look for?
I think I'm always really interested if people have a good answer to this, because I don't really have a good
so
answer.
Broad, right? The question.
What I like, we talked about XSS. I've built some browser plugin tooling to help me find stuff. I also posted it about it on Twitter a few times. So typically my flow is just clicking buttons in a website.
Yeah.
And basically having Burp open, checking the output of some of these plugins that I've built, and that's basically how I get into the application.
A lot of top hackers have that answer. And the question that we ask, we pose, to see if anybody has a quick answer to have structure, because if they do, that's really cool. But so many of the top hackers say exactly what you said. And that's great for the top hackers, right? But I'm also, as I've worked with mentees and people that are trying to get that sense, I wonder how you came to that. So do you let's think back, you've been studying music forever, and now you're going into bug bounty related stuff. I guess maybe you had a job at Bull in security beforehand, but how did you, when you first approached a target, was it similar, or did you use a checklist, or how did you know what to look for? It's a hard question. I'm sorry. I know it's tricky.
Question. Yeah, I guess it's something you learn over time.
Yeah.
What really helped me and still helps me is sometimes, like I said, I've built some browser extensions that do stuff basically.
Yeah.
And to refine the output a bit, to look into alerts popping up, I think that really helps me to get a sense of what's happening.
Wow.
But it's an interesting question, actually. I guess I have that sense for XSS, and there are some other hackers also at the event. I once had a discussion about with Kuramatai, who's also at the event. He's really good in SQL injection.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, SQL injection, does that even exist still?
Exactly, same. Yeah.
And he's like testing with a single quote somewhere and gets 1 byte difference in the responses. Like, yes, there's an SQL injection here.
No way, dude.
Like,
what a beast. Yeah, I gotta meet them. There's so many people here that I don't actually have often, because we'll mention this as well. The event is a sort of, it's possible to self-sponsor yourself to come to this event.
Yep.
It's possible to pay the amount for the ticket and the hotel and come over here. So there's so many faces here that I haven't actually seen at the live hacking events before, but I see on Twitter all the time. So there's been so many people I want to meet. But it's interesting that XSS stood out to you specifically from the beginning, and that you actually went through the process of creating tooling specifically for it. Is there a reason why XSS is like your shit? Or did you like? Were you a JS developer before?
No, not at all. I'm also a terrible developer in any. But what I like about it is, actually, we touched upon it a bit. Like, I like code review, but also at the same time clicking buttons, and I guess that's where that's where JavaScript comes in, right? So I have some solid issues on like open source stuff where I could also do the same basically, but then on the server side. That's nice, but typically, that's what I like about XSS. Also because JavaScript is it's so crazy. You can do like anything. You can have like a million ways to the same goal. I like that about it.
That's really interesting. So can you tell me a little bit? I don't know if you're comfortable with sharing so many of your secrets or whatever, but what are some of these extensions or browser plugins or whatever that you've written to help yourself?
So I've one that is actually really basic, but it just monitors every URL the browser fetches.
Okay.
And if it has any query parameters, and then it will inject just like a harmless payload into every query parameter and see if it's reflected.
Okay.
So like the reflector plugin from Burp. But what I like about keeping it in the browser is that in Burp, you constantly have to switch focus. You have to see if is this valid, something. And now I've just built it like it will literally pop an alert saying XSS here, and while I'm clicking buttons. So sometimes when I approach a new target and I'm clicking buttons, I found my first few XSSs just by browsing the application.
Got it. And so does it basically just like put the query parameter in your payload so that you know where it's coming from, or how do you?
So it alerts like the URL with my injection.
Nice.
So that's really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so. And another one I did is like an extension on Franz Rosen's post message tracker.
Dude, I love that. Yeah.
So I really like the extension. What I dislike about it is that for every page you visit, you have to click it open to see if something pops out to you. So I made like a really small adaptation that will just look for a low-hanging fruit, like XSS syncs, like eval or whatever. And if it's in there already, then it will pop up an alert and just prompt me to check it out. And especially, I've been a bit obsessed with post message XSS the last few weeks.
Is so fascinating. I have been too, and it's like I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential there, especially as these apps sort of move towards a framework. You know, every app that you work with now is using like, you know, React, or Angular, Vue, whatever, these single page apps. You know, it's kind of hard to get anything besides DOM XSS. So being able to do post message stuff is really that really helps a lot, and it expands the XSS scope quite a bit. Yeah,
there's still so much low hanging fruit. I was really surprised about it, and it also seems like a lot of websites have this support chat button thingy. It seems like all these providers are vulnerable somehow.
Yeah, well, amazing. Because I think it's really interesting that we've seen browsers increase security, like cross window, cross tab, all that kind of stuff. But in order to do that and keep things functional and make it so that you can have like a nice user experience where, you know, PayPal checkout, for example, you click the button, it pops up a window. Well, it has to communicate somehow, right? And same thing with these chat support buttons or the wallets or MetaMask or all this stuff that we've been talking about. These things have to be able to communicate somehow, and often this ends up being post message. And so it's like a very widely used piece of technology, but I think it's quite underexplored.
And insecure by default.
I think. Absolutely, right? Like there's no default checks. It's not checking for origin. All that stuff is up to the developer. And so many developers are just like, it's not even on their radar, right? It's not even something that they know they should be looking for or even concerned about, because I don't think it's very intuitive that you would expect, you know, some random website might iframe my website and then start talking with it, right? Like it's not really an attack scenario that you're going to think about. And so I think it's super, super underexplored, and there's a lot of research to happen there.
Yeah, thanks for looking right at me when you say there's a lot of research to happen there. Joel knows about and I'll share this with you off air, René. But there's a piece of post message related research that I've been working on, and that I finally got to a place where it's like, oh, this is gonna break some shit. So that'll be coming soon. I'm not ready to talk about that one super much yet, but the post message space is truly fascinating, and there's a lot of vulns there. And like you highlighted, Joel, if you understand the concepts behind you know, browser security, you know, your same origin policy, and you see, hey, these pages somehow are communicating between the two of them. That should you should ask why. Why is that happening? How is that happening?
No.
And oftentimes the answer is post message. So definitely a cool tech space there. Before we move on, I guess, do you have any? So obviously you made a modification to the post message tracker by Franz Rosen, and that's a great piece of software for people to install to even just get introspection into how post messages are working on the page.
Definitely.
Do you have any other tips or tricks you've run across in the post message arena that you'd like to pass off, or is it mostly just understanding the logic of each individual page?
I think that's the thing. Also, like you said, the origin check is like the key factor almost in this stuff, and that's what we're talking about, like getting a sense for stuff. Like now, the past weeks, I've been hyper focused on post message, and now if I get the pop-up, I see instantly you see like t.origin or this, not this one.
That's awesome. I mean, there's so many things that just I think come intuitively to us, that now that we've been doing hacking for so long, that you see post message, you're like, oh, okay, like I know how this works, or I know how this is probably going to work. And it's fun. We were hacking with Franz yesterday during the event, and during the pre-event, I guess. And he guessed we were doing like a path, secondary context, path traversal, path substitution. And he realized, okay, it's 3 paths up, and he guessed what the legitimate like API path that was being used in the backend was. Awesome. Just based on like, oh yeah, I think this is probably how this works. And he just was like trying different stuff, and we couldn't actually brute force it because there was a rate limit. And so he was just like manually testing some stuff, and 5 minutes later he was like, oh, I got it. We're like, oh, wait, what? It's like this totally internal endpoint. It's crazy.
Yeah, dude, that blew my mind. And it really shows like, you know, people have different intuitions at different spots, and it's all about, you know, when you're growing as a hacker, it's all about sort of fostering those intuitions. But going back to what we were talking about with the post message origin thing, I will say I normally do the same thing, right? Where I see like, you know, whatever t.origin, whatever, all right, whatever, like I'm done with that, just throw it away. But lately I've kind of looked at a little bit closer at some of this stuff, and I've seen so many developers get regular expressions wrong in that context. If you see an origin being compared to a regular expression, and they're not escaping the dots, there's going to be problems there. And it's that same, age-old story of like, thank God for whoever came up with dots to be any character in regular expressions. Like, it's the most legendary thing ever, and I'm so grateful for it. So definitely be on the lookout for that one when you're checking out post message stuff. Okay, so I wanted to actually ask you about 2 tweets that I had, when I stalked you on Twitter before we do the interview. You had, so one you've done recently was a sort of an XSS scenario where you had the following conditions. Recently encountered, I'm just going to read the tweet. Recently encountered a challenging stored XSS case. No dots, no parentheses, no plus, no single quote, no space. And wait, was that no space character?
Yeah,
or
no space character.
Okay, I was going to say
also
no space. Because the next line says max 35 characters, which is no space.
Yeah.
And then unlimited amount of payloads that can be stored. Every payload is reflected twice.
Yeah, which is so funny because as you were reading through those, I'm going through my mental checklist. I'm like, oh, I know a bypass for that. I know a bypass for that. Oh, that cancels my I'm running out of bypasses.
Very intense, XSS scenario. And you represented most of it here in the tweet, but talk to me a little bit about your testing procedure for that. And can you tell me like how long it took you to actually get to the solution you put in the tweet?
Quite a while, actually.
Yeah.
So we have a Discord server with quite some hackers, and once a year we tend to meet up in a big villa in the Netherlands, and people fly in from all of it. Like last year, people from America flew in, etc. It's really nice. And this year we got We Hack to arrange us some fresh targets to hack.
Awesome.
So this was a really nice program, and I was basically in my same flow again, just pasting stuff in there and
just clicking buttons.
Harmony was also in this event. He reached out to me saying, "Dude, you're escaping HTML here, so maybe you have an XSS." And then we looked into it. It was like a field meant for an identifier. So it would do stuff like replace spaces with underscores and stuff like that. So, and it, like if you added the plus symbol, it would just write out plus in letters and stuff like that. So it was really challenging setup. But we could use enough characters we could put in enough payloads to get a full payload in the end. So we had quite some challenging stuff to work around all these things.
That's awesome. I love that little hacker house type thing. We've done that a couple times throughout the years at different events. Oftentimes we'll do it after the event. We did that in Japan. We went to Hakone, and that's where we recorded with Lupin. And it's awesome to have that kind of. It's a lot more relaxing than the actual
definitely
right in the heat of the live event, and to just be able to kind of hang out and still have those kind of hacker discussions and stuff. You have what is it, a hacker hideout? I think it's called. Is that what that is?
No.
Okay, well,
I would wish it was that. No, it's actually kind of hacker hideout. Also originates from my quest to get an office space, actually. Because I was looking for an office space, and I was thinking how awesome would it be if you have an office for bug bounty hunts, like a flex working space where people could just drop in, hire an office for a day or something. And then I was looking into that because I needed my own office space, so maybe I can create something to do that with others. And then I found out that the full-time bug bounty community in the Netherlands is 5 people or something.
Oh yeah, all over the world. It's kind of hit or miss. So I'd be really, but I think actually there are a decent amount of people that are in offensive security. And so and those positions do tend to be remote. And so there, maybe there's some possibilities there.
The idea got converted. I started it together with Goos, also at the event here, to first just try to build a small community. We didn't want to open up a Discord and allow everyone in, but just an in crowd of people, and maybe do fun stuff like the villa party. We also do meetups or whatever. So in this event, we we started out with creating our own hacking team, basically. So yeah.
That's great, man. Yeah, I hope that takes off, because anytime you can get a bunch of hackers in a space together, it really does, crazy stuff happens. Shit breaks all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I mean, and that's like why we started the podcast too, is we wanted to be able to sort of extend these conversations that are able to be had by hackers behind closed doors with the rest of the community, so that they can learn from it, because there's so much value. Like every time I come to one of these events and I'm talking with people, even if it's just like 20-30 minutes, there's so much, like, hackers have a level of understanding of what each other are doing to so much of a degree that you can just immediately, like, even if like we've never met, this is the first time we met, we can just have this conversation and we know exactly like where the other one's coming from, because we've like been through that same kind of hacking experience. And it's so awesome to be able to have those same connections with so many hackers.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's so like the knowledge sharing is just incredible. Like I don't even know how to express like how valuable the knowledge sharing is between hackers at these events. And so I think it's really important to create a space that fosters that kind of that energy and that kind of community, where you can have an open space where you can talk with hackers and you can collaborate and you can share ideas and bounce stuff off of each other.
Yeah, it works great. And also within our team now, I think I could say, without being like proud, without flexing, I'm the most experienced bug bounty hunter in my team. But the most brilliant ideas came from my teammates.
Isn't that like, crazy? Yeah. Isn't it crazy how that always works? Yeah. Like it seems like when you work with some of the newer people, like as you're re-explaining stuff, you're like, oh wait, why do I think that way? And so and not even when you're explaining, but just when a fresh set of eyes is on the scenario, that's really helpful.
Definitely. I really like that. Also with the XSS payload that we just discussed, the very limited one, I deliberately post those on Twitter just to get feedback. And like Johan Carlson is also at the event, was like in the first tweet, but you could just URL escape or URL encode the dot and then you're done. Like, thank you. This would save me like 5 hours of my life.
Love that for me. Yeah. Thank you. No, that's great, man. It is great when we have the community together.
Yeah, well, and it's really funny because me and Justin, we hack a lot together, and we do a lot of pair hacking. Oftentimes it's not even that we're like both at our laptops, but I'll just be like sitting next to him. We'll just be sort of observing, and I'll be like, hey, maybe you could try this or you could try that, and he'll do the same thing. And I think it's so valuable because when you have been working on a bug for like hours or days or whatever, you make a lot of assumptions, right? Where you're like, oh, I this is probably not happening, or I'm like 99% sure that this is the case, or you just you don't even think about it because you're very focused on like a goal. Yeah. And then when somebody new comes in, they'll start asking. They're not dumb questions, but they're sort of like, they don't have the same kind of background context that you do because they haven't been looking at that bug for so long. And oftentimes those are the most valuable questions where they'll be like, well, have you just tried this? And you're like, oh, why haven't I tried that? I probably should try that.
That's the case here as well. You're like committed to the path you're taking. Like you have the payload is halfway there. So you're not committed, or you're not prepared to give up on it, or like, so you make it work somehow.
Yeah. So we're coming to a wrap here, and the only other thing that I really wanted to make sure we hit on this podcast was sort of talking about the Intigriti event that we're at right now. We talked a little bit about Intigriti as a platform, but I guess just some thoughts for the community from this event. For me, is that one of the coolest things is that people can pay their own way, like we talked about, and I think there's some pluses to that and there's some downsides to that, right? The plus is that you get to see a lot of new faces. You get to see, the people that are successful in the industry and that contribute on Twitter and stuff like that, but haven't necessarily been at the live hacking event scene. And that's really great. The downside of that, though, is that there are so many hackers. And especially if you have a scope that's a little bit more constrained, which would normally be great for a normal size live hacking event, I think, when you open it up to so many people, the dupes start getting a little overwhelming. So that's one thought for me.
It's challenging. Yeah.
I think I heard yesterday that there was a bug that got it was like $1,100 and everybody got $11, which means I got split 100 times. I
think the lowest bounty I've seen is like $4.63.
Yeah, and I think some of those ones, they're fixing some stuff. I had a conversation with them this morning, but one of the other things they did at this event was that they had a channel in Slack for knowledge sharing, and that knowledge sharing was incentivized by bonuses.
Yes.
And man, did that save our butts, this event. So really like to see that. And I've got a couple other things as well, but did you have any thoughts you wanted to share about this event?
Yeah, I thought indeed the sponsored, non-sponsored thing was really interesting. For me personally, I wouldn't have attended if it was self-sponsored, I guess. Because, my reasoning was this is a job for me, and to pay to be able to perform my job was a bridge too far for me, basically. So I wasn't in the first batch of invites, and then the self-sign-up period started, and I was like, well, let's just pray I get an invite in the second batch, and then I got invited, luckily, so that's nice.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
I'm actually really surprised you weren't in the first batch of invites because, I mean, you're so high on the Intigriti platform that, I mean, it's very hit or miss. I was at one of the very first ones. I don't even know if I can say the target. It was the banking app is what I'll say.
All right.
Yeah, and that was really interesting. But it was kind of the first time they'd ever done anything like that. It was very small, and this is such a different type of vibe to that, where it's it's very big. It's very there's so many people, and I do like the self-sponsored thing. I'm actually self-sponsored for this one. Part of it is half vacation, half getting to see the hacker friends. I've never been to Portugal, so it's fun, and I had a bunch of miles that were just sitting around doing nothing. So I think if you can make it work, you can make it work. But it's nice to offer that opportunity for if people really, really want to be here. Absolutely, you can pay to win if pay to arrive. Maybe not win, but yeah, you can definitely pay to get here, and you can sort of show that you have the capabilities. I think it can be really, really difficult for new hackers to break into the live hacking space because there's so much competition here, and the people who are hacking at these events all the time are just insanely talented. And so, getting a spot can be very, very difficult unless you're doing full-time hacking or unless you find a bunch of crazy bugs in a short period of time, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's definitely been a big piece. So cool to see it go sort of both ways there, getting to see everyone's, face and that sort of thing, but also seeing the downside of like, oh, well, I guess maybe sometimes 40 people live hacking events is not so bad.
No, definitely.
Yeah. So one other thing that I saw as well, and we'll come back to you as well, see if you got anything else to share. But one other thing that I saw was that they have, or at least they're supposed to later today, have a little sort of help desk of sorts for going and sort of debating your bugs.
Oh, really?
So normally, you've got to go and you've got to be like, for anyone that's been to a live hacking event, how this works. But it's like knock, 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 bang on the door, like, hey, I need to talk to someone about that, and then you get to have a conversation, right? And then you resolve it. But I thought it was really, really cool that they sent out a message saying, hey, there should be a dedicated time later today to discuss some changes to your severity, or maybe is it a dupe, is it not a dupe? So I think that could be really cool if integrated long term into the bug bounty live hacking event scene.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, this morning I was fuming about some decision. And so it's good that we do this now and not me shouting at Intel people or something.
I think we've talked about this before, but that is one of the most powerful things about a live hacking event, is that you're on site with the customer, and it's really, really hard to have that same level of communication that's like face to face over just posting a comment on your report or whatever, because it may not be you never know which team member is going to read that, or if it's triage team or whatever. Like instead, you can just walk up and have a human discussion with somebody, and you can actually just get to the bottom of it. And it's happened with myself, you, both of us together, even on bugs, multiple times at events where we've gone and we've talked to the customer and we've been like, I think there's a misunderstanding in this bug. Like, here, let me show you, and let me see because here's what I see. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing. Like, let me make sure that we're on the same page here. And maybe if I'm misunderstanding something, you can explain that to me. And that level of interaction is super, super helpful to just like get to the bottom of a bug without getting, mad and stuff. I won't disclose anything, but one of our buddies, he got a little trouble. He was a little too raw with the customer at one point.
Feedback,
so I think it's important that it's good to be honest, but not 100% all the time. So that's a nice thing about being able to just talk with the customers. They can sort of read your facial expression and all that. Yeah,
well, the hackers, they've had when you're online, there's always that whole online thing, right? Like you can like you can keyboard warrior it, if you want to. But I think people have had more experience in their lifetime of like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't, be as irate if I'm meeting with someone in person and seeing, hey, they're just a person on the other side of the computer as well,
definitely.
trying to do their best, and I think Intigriti and the client, I guess we'll say, for this event has done a good job.
Intel,
it's public. Okay. Yeah. Intel, they do a great job with that.
They do, definitely.
And particularly shout out to, Chris Flying Toasters.
Definitely.
He always throws great events. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking just the other day how having worked in like a professional job now has changed my communication style so much. Yeah. Like when I was younger, before I had, worked a corporate job, I would be very raw. I would just, if it came into my mind, I'd just friggin' say it, and now like, once you work at a company, you kind of master the art of writing passive aggressive emails, and you get good at like writing something and like, I'm not happy about this. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. And I think that's really that kind of communication skill is so useful.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I see it a lot with people who've worked, like you've worked at AppSec and at big companies and stuff, and so I think that experience is just really, really valuable.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, because especially if you work like if you're handling incoming bug bounty reports, you have to like sell someone else's report within your organization. Like, this is really critical. You should pick it up. You should drop all the features you're building and pick this up. So that I guess that's a useful skill also when being a bug bounty hunter yourself.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me when I hear people in AppSec talk about like SLAs with their own company. Like, they're saying like, okay, I can, I have this agreement that I've negotiated with the, programming division, like they have to address our issues within a month. And I'm like, this is the same company. Like why is this so complicated? But it is in the end. And I've never even thought about that actually, that the people on your side of, when you're on the receiving side of a report, you then have to represent that report to your team, to your developers. So yeah, thanks for all the hard work, guys.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Us, bug hunters, I do appreciate it whether we say it or not. René, any other thoughts on the live hacking event? I've got, I think maybe one or two I can throw out there, but
not really.
Yeah,
you go ahead.
It's been a good time.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's really nice to meet the Intigriti team because it is my first live hacking event. Obviously, I've spent with Intigriti. I've spent time with Inti before, which is great. He's always a pleasure to see. Yeah. But particularly like Intigriti, Travis, and some of the other guys, have just been really pleasant to be around. And it's been a really nice experience. And I also really like the structure that they've done here. So and I guess there's trade-offs to both, but with the HackerOne live hacking events, how it goes is that, you fly in, you do your, opening cocktail hour or whatever, that either that same day or the next day if you're international. And then you do a hacking day, and then you do a community day. And that community day is just kind of running around with friends and hanging out and stuff like that. And the hacking day is like pretty much all focused on the event and that sort of thing. Yes. And that's nice in that sense because you're done with the hacking at the community day point and you don't feel tempted to hack. So I've always been really a fan of that structure. But this event is also really nice too, where they have multiple hacking days and then community stuff in the evenings, because that one, it gives you more time to collab with your friends, right? You get to work on the event a little bit more, but also it forces you to put the bugs down a little bit and walk away. I have a really hard time with that personally. So I've enjoyed the variety in the structure, and like I said, the team has been very accommodating. So overall, it's been a pretty cool event. The bounties are still rolling in, so we'll see how the final payout.
Justin's checking his phone right now to see if he got a bounty.
No bounty. No, but that's no fault but my own perhaps. And so we'll see how the final payouts roll through. But overall, yeah, pretty solid event. So happy to have been here. Yeah, so I guess we'll close off there. René, thanks for coming on the pod, man. And
thanks for having me.
You said, I'll pull up the socials right now on Twitter. Of course, we have it as renniepak, and that's the same thing for Intigriti. And then on LinkedIn, I'm going to let you say the name because I'm going to mispronounce it.
No, ignore me on LinkedIn.
Okay, ignore him on LinkedIn. Only go follow on Twitter and on
and visit hackerhideout.xyz.
Yes, hackerhideout.xyz. That's another great thing to check out. Where is that specifically? Are you guys doing that all within the Netherlands, or do you have a specific city?
We don't have concrete plan on that yet, but we're really trying to take it step by step to guarantee the quality of the community.
Sure. What's the target demographic though? Netherlands residents or?
Not specifically.
Okay.
Not specifically.
Gotcha. So this could be bigger than just the Netherlands if you have a group of hackers.
So the dream is still to have an office somewhere, or perhaps all around the world. But that's dream.
Very cool, man. Well, I'm looking forward to see you get it.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks.